Welcome to English Lessons with Dr. Vinamrata. Today we are going to discuss in detail the line by line analysis of the poetry Island written by Nissim Ezekiel. So before moving on to the poetry itself, a little brief overview of Nissim Ezekiel. As we all know that Ezekiel was an Anglo-Indian Jewish writer, a poet, a playwright, an actor, an art critic, an editor. So, such a versatile person he is. And his poems are generally modern in nature, and he was deeply influenced by modernist poets. So, their influence is seen, the influence of poets like Ezra Pound, Eliot, Keats, and Auden is reflected in his poems. He talks about the anxieties of the modern man, their demand of flesh, their guilt, their anxiety, their desire for flesh or their demand for flesh, and the inclination towards spirituality. So, both the ways. At one place, he's talking about spirituality, at the other hand, he's talking about the demons and the men who, or the dragons who claim themselves to be men. So that is about his approach towards poems, and we'll start with the poetry island. But this was a brief overview of the writing skill of Ezekiel and something about his personal details. So Ezekiel was born on 16th of December 1924 and died on 9th of January 2004. He was such a commendable writer, so obviously he was awarded Sahitya Academy in 1983, basically for his most famous collection, that is Latter Day Psalms. His another important poem is The Night of the Scorpion, and one more important poem that we are going to discuss today is The Island. And in this poem Island, you will see that the resonation of Ezekiel himself growing up in the city of Bombay is reflected in the poetry. So without much ado, let's start with line by line analysis of the poetry. So here we have the poem in front of us. It is of 25 lines, as you can see, and all the stanzas are of 5 lines each. Hence, there are 5 stanzas, each comprising of 5 lines. Altogether, the poem is of 25 lines. We all can see that there is no rhyme scheme or no metrical pattern, fixed metrical pattern, which is being followed here in this poetry. So, we can say that the poem is written in free verse. And this is the general tendency of all the modern writers to write in free verse. And these were the technical aspects that we were talking about of this poetry. Moving on to the theme and the exploration of the poem. It starts with somewhat familiar lines or somewhat similar lines of Eliot when Eliot starts in his wasteland. A similar kind of thing you will see here when he talks about this island, that is Mumbai, that Ezekiel is talking about, and he has lived there. He is a native of Mumbai, so obviously he has embraced the place. He has embraced the manners of the modern world that is there. But somewhere or the other, he is unsatisfied with the grotesque nature of the modern city life. So that is reflected in the very first lines. Unsuitable for song. The island is not suitable for song. It is not praiseworthy. It is not something which has to be given credit for, something which has to be sung. So he is saying that it is unsuitable for any kind of poem, song, or poetry. But still he is writing or contributing a poem on island, on Mumbai, and he's saying unsuitable for song as well as sense. The place makes no sense at all because the island is flowering into slums and skyscrapers. So there is the vast difference, the chasm between the poor and the rich, the chasm between the lower class and the upper class. At one place, there are slums, the area is full of slums, the lower strata of the society where people are forced to live in dehumanized conditions. And at the other hand, there you have skyscrapers and high towering buildings. So that is the gulf between the people living in the place. And the island is flowering in that condition. So flowering is a very, you can say, a satirical word that he's using. Of course, when he's talking about slums, slums cannot be compared to flowering into slums, but still, and just like Eliot, April is the cruelest month, burning lilacs out of the dead. He is talking about the growing of the slums, and the growing of the slums and the skyscrapers. For that, the word he is using is flowering. Means the island is producing day by day more and more slums and skyscrapers. And these slums and skyscrapers are reflecting precisely the growth of my mind. In the same way, my mind is also growing. Whatever one sees around, whatever environment one is living in, of course, it has its impression in the person's personality. So he's saying that these slums and these skyscrapers both are two different versions of the society, both are two different areas of the society, both are the two extremes of the society, and these two extremes are also growing in his mind. So his mind is also not very uh, escalated or spiritual or highlighted, and nor it is totally degraded, he's saying. So there is you can say that the constant struggle between the evil and the good, which is generally reflected in the nature of any person, which is generally in the inner conscience of any person. He's talking about the same thing, that there are slums and there are skyscrapers, both growing in his mind also. And I'm here to find my way in it. And through this, so when he's talking about Bombay, he's not just talking about the outward Bombay that he's seeing around, but he's also talking about his inner turbulence, which he has to somewhat unravel, which he has to somewhat get into terms with. And he is trying to find out a way amidst all of this chaos inside his mind as well as outside in the world around. Sometimes I cry for help. Now, because of so much, two different variations in his mind, two different extremes going on in his mind, he is crying for help. But mostly I keep my own counsel. Okay, will you cry for help? Anyone will cry for help when there is some help to be expected. But he knows that in this world of modern civilization, and especially in a city like Bombay, where people are busy in their own life, they have no time for others. So, who is going to respond to his cry? So, sometimes, although he cries, but generally most of the time he is his own mentor, he keeps doing his own counseling, he keeps to himself. And I hear distorted echoes of my own ambiguous voice. So whenever he tries to call out for help, what comes back is distorted echoes of his own voice. Of course, his voice is also not very clear, his voice is also ambiguous. In the very beginning only he is told that in his mind also there is a constant conflict, just like the slums and the skyscrapers, the two extremes. In the same way, his mind is also facing the two extremes, the good and the evil, the bad and the good. So there is the ambiguous voice, the shadiness, the gray areas in his voice. And when he is calling out for help, of course, no one is answering. What comes back is his own voice, even in a distorted form, in an echo. And some voices which comes back to him are of dragons claiming to be humans. So the people living there are not normal human beings, they are dragons. Dragon is a metaphor, of course, here for human beings who are evil in nature, who are most likely to keep to themselves, not ready to help anyone else. If there is someone in despair, no one is going to have a look at you. And in the very beginning only, when he talks about the two chasm, uh, he talks about the two societies, two different societies, and the chasm between them. One is the slum and another is the skyscraper. Of course the skyscrapers are not going to help for the slum areas. So there is this vast distinction because people are not caring for one another. And bright and tempting breezes flow across the island. But amidst all these, there are breezes flowing across the island. Those breezes are bright, attractive. Of course, Bombay is a city of attraction. People are attracted towards it, going to make going migrating there more and more, trying to make a better life out for themselves. So the city is full of bright and tempting breezes which are flowing across the island, separating the past from the future. What was the past of Bombay? What is the future of Bombay? So people are living in the present. Whatever time you have in this present, they are living it to the full. And then the air is still again. Because once you start living there, you will realize that everything there is stagnant, everything there is decaying. And as I sleep, the fragrance of ignorance. He knows everything, but then he cannot do anything to change it. So the best thing to do is to sleep off your troubles. So he is also sleeping. He's sleeping the fragrance of ignorance. How delight the soul with absolute sense of salvation. So he says that the ultimate salvation one can find is to ignore everything that is around you. That is how your soul will be delighted. That is how you are going to survive. If you are going to live in a place like Bombay, if you have to survive, then you have to unburden your soul with any kind of heaviness, with any kind of sympathy for the others, with any kind of possibility to change the future or to change the people around you, to change the dragons claiming to be humans around you. Only thing you can do for finding salvation is to sleep your troubles off, to enjoy, to bask in the fragrance of the ignorance. How? Hold to a single willed direction? Question mark. So it's very, you can say, hard, difficult, and a troublesome thing to do, to make your will into a single direction, to choose a single directed path. But again, you have no other choice. He cannot leave the island. I cannot leave the island. Why? Because he has been born there. He belongs there. See, he is also talking. It is, this poem has got some autobiographical tone, of course, because he was a Jew and he is living in Mumbai, and of course he has faced discriminations there. Plus the discrimination of the rich and the poor, and the chasm between the society and the humanity who are not humans at all. So he is in that way very much disturbed and perplexed, but still he knows that this is the place where he was born, this is his native land, this is where he belongs to. So he's finding out some ways to come into terms with the place. So I cannot leave the island. I was born here and belong. Even now, a host of miracles hurries me a daily business. So every day when he goes to the daily chores of his life, when he goes to his office or his college or his places of business, what is the driving factor that motivates him? Some sort of miracle. Somehow, with some magic, he reaches there. He does not know what is the motivation behind it. Because, of course, he is very demotivated, but still, somehow, he manages to be in his place at time, minding the ways of the island. And that is the way of the island. Because the people are in such a constant fret and move that even if you're standing outside the local train, you will be pushed into the train. So you will reach your destination somehow or the other. So he says that in this some kind of magical way, I don't know how hurriedly I am driven to my workplace every day, as if it is some sort of miracle. And this is the way of the world, this is the way of actually Bombay. So it hurries me to my daily business every day, minding the ways of the island as a good native should, taking calm and clamor in my stride. So he's trying to come to terms with the island, trying to come to terms with the ways of the island, and somehow trying to be a good native there and to belong to that place, to be a good native to that place. One thing one must always have to keep in mind and has to always carry with oneself is both calm and clamor in your steps. Stride means steps. So everyday walking or everyday procedure that you follow, or you can say the daily life, where or how you live in the city like Bombay. Of course, you have to have been able to create a balance between both of the things, to the both extremes of the world. Like in the very beginning, he talks about slums and skyscrapers, the lower and the middle class, the upper and the lower class, the good and the bad that is going on in his mind, the conscience, which is being torn apart into two extremes. And to maintain that balance, there should be calmness also. Just like meditation, he says that he finds salvation in sleeping off his troubles, so he maintains his calmness also. Plus plus obviously there is always a kind of clamor, a kind of unrest there. So this calm and clamor, two words which are quite opposite, coming into the same line, of course, pertain to oxymoron. He is using oxymoron here and saying that calm and clamor both are being followed in his steps everyday life. It is a part and parcel of his life. If you are to live in Bombay, you have to live the both extremes. You have to maintain your inner calmness in your mind, and you have to come to the terms with the busy life, the clamor, the noise, the disturbance which is all around you in the city of Bombay, of course. So that is all about this poem. The ways of Bombay he is describing, the ways of that island he is describing. And although he is not totally in terms with the place, but still he knows that it is his native place and he cannot leave it behind. It is where he was born, and he has to come to terms with life is, as Bombay is. So that is all about this poetry, and I'm sure you all have understood it. And if yes, then please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. Thank you.